What is up, people? Welcome back to the channel. So today we are going to be doing another training day. Today I'm in for push, which I haven't recorded since the very start of the diet. So it's actually going to be an interesting one to go through to see how my strength has held up. Has it progressed? Has it regressed? Has it maintained? So we're 12 weeks now into the fat loss phase and we're pretty much 10 kilos down. So it's a big change in terms of body weight relative to when I started off this program. And notoriously, push days are one where your progressions are going to come a lot slower as you lose large amounts of body weight, right? There's a big element of stability that you're losing from losing more body fat off your back. And then as well, even on the likes of like bench press, some people may find their bench press is affected by even their glute shrinking. So I'm gonna run through my session today. I'm gonna give you plenty of training tips as I go throughout it, the same way I did with the pull day. As you see, I'm sweating balls already. It's hotter than Eddie Hall's fucking ass crack in here. Not that I know or anything, but sweating already. 5 to 3. It's time to get to work. It's time to do a push. Well, let's get into it. First movement is just abs. Pretty much doing abs 3 times a week still. So I have 2 days for enduro kit. So 2 days for enduro table crunch. I got 1 day for enduro Roman chair leg raise. And one really important tip when you're doing a Roman chair leg raise, or doing any type of leg raise, is you are not just thinking about lifting your legs up. If you just think about lifting your legs up, you are primarily going to be getting your hip flexors doing that work, right? One thing that I want you to notice as I'm doing these is I'm really trying to drive my hips up off the pad, okay? I'm trying to get that lower back to round, and this is causing my lower ab to complete the movement, right? So having a mixture of both maybe more upper ab exercises where you're kind of initiating movement through your upper torso, and then somewhere you're initiating through the lower part of the spine is probably going to be a good idea if you want full development of the rectus abdominis. A lot of people will say that like even when they diet down, they get lean, they can't see their abs. And a lot of times it's just because they haven't trained them. You have to remember the abs are muscle too. The bigger they are, better they're going to look as you get leaner, right? If I never train my arms and I just diet down, my arm muscles are going to look pretty small, if not non-existent. So if I wanted to have them look big when I'm lean, I train them, right? The exact same way you do ab movements, right? Now, one kind of downside with these is they're very, very difficult to load. One way that I can progress them to make them that little bit harder is I can change the lever arm. So I can essentially have my lower abs take more load through taking more of my body weight. And what I'm thinking about doing next week, because I'm already getting like a heap of reps in these, and I'm kind of just get to a point where we get like up to 20 reps, and you know, going beyond 20 reps at this point, I prefer to just do another movement because I just find I'm kind of gassing or fading for other reasons, even if it's just like concentration, boredom, whatever, right? So I think what I'm going to do next week is I'm going to move to a hanging leg raise. I'll probably start a hanging leg raise with a little bit of support behind my back. So I might do it with my arms up overhead, have a bench behind my back, and this is going to reduce any swing and motion. So that'd be a good progression to do if you want to do maybe leg raises on the floor, then go to a Roman chair leg raise, and then go to the likes of hanging raise, and that would be a good progression strategy to develop the lower abs. Abs done, now on to calves. So yeah, starting off this push day with abs and calves. Now, I kind of, I'm almost like, in my mind, these are warm-ups, right? Doing these at the start of the session should not have me feeling fatigued for the rest of the session. Like realistically, if you have an issue with training abs and calves at the start of the training session and have that affect your pushing work, I think you have bigger problems. So I think that'd be something you need to work on the recovery side. Now, I'm doing calves. I did calves yesterday. Did standing calf raises yesterday. I'm doing standing calf raises again. Now, I've had to move this training day around a little bit. I've had to move my trainer week around a little bit with some of the travel that I was doing. So previously I was doing push, pull, leg, rest say upper lower, and that meant then I had a break between doing 2 cable crunch days and 2 days where I was doing calf raises for a straight set. Whereas like now I'm doing, yesterday I was doing cable crunch, so I moved around the cable crunch from today to the Roman chair leg raise, and now today I'm going to do rest pause and calves. Now the variation I've made to calf raises versus doing straight sets yesterday and a rest pause today is I am just slightly changing my foot stance. Okay, so there is a little bit of research, and I don't have the exact details off the top of my mind, other than the fact that changing your feet from going a little bit more outwards to a little bit more inwards can preferentially change which head of the gastrocnemius that you're going to be targeting. So most days I just have my feet pretty much dead. So today I'm bringing my feet out slightly. Okay, so toes pointed outwards, heels pointed in. Just this small little tweak has meant that day after day, so from yesterday's calf training to today, there's no real difference in terms of loading that I'm using. The loadings are relatively the same, but I don't feel as if one day affecting the next one. So yesterday's day is not really affecting today's calf training. So just that small little tweak, just maybe kind of change a little bit of bias on what type of head of the gastroc I could potentially grow. Maybe it does play out in real life, maybe it doesn't. Maybe the changes are too small to notice. Don't really care. All I care about is that I'm able to follow my training program and actually still get a good stimulus with my calves today. So I'm gonna get into it. I'm gonna go through a few warm sets just to grease the groove, not too many. So yeah, let's get into it. All right, so we're finally on to some upper body, and we're starting off a machine lateral raise. So with this particular machine, pretty much as soon as it moves that arm out to the side, the resistance is on. You'll see that through the cam mechanism. So it's using a circular cam, which means that the load remains pretty much the exact same throughout the entire rep. Now, this is contrast to like of cable lateral raise, where you can manipulate the resistance of the cable, or even if you have a cam on a machine that has a different shape other than just a complete circle. So when it's complete circle, the distance from the axis to the cable remains the exact same width or diameter the entire way throughout the range of motion, meaning the resistance is pretty much going to equal throughout the entire rep. When you have a cam that changes shape, so you might see it on a leg extension, where it looks more like an egg. When the egg side goes furthest away from the axis, that will make it then hardest in that position. And then when you start to see it come more to like the flatter side of the egg, that's going to mean that the resistance there is. So this is going to be primarily more kind of hard through the mid to shorten position, because as I move my arm further out from the side, then it's also going against the strength curve of your actual depth, where you're starting to get weaker as you get up to the top position and you're starting to get the muscle short. It's a good option to have at the very start of a session, and a good option to have as a little bit of warm up before getting pressing. So you got 3 sets here to do. Another thing that you probably notice that I'm doing here as well is I'm standing back a little bit from the foot plate. I'm standing on my fours at back, right, versus up very close to the machine. And this is just to ensure that I am having those axes going through my shoulders, but also to just make the machine feel a little bit nicer. If I stand up really close, I almost have to like get my arms up like this, and it just feels really uncomfortable and really unnatural. Whereas if I can stand it out a little bit further, make my arms a little bit longer, and really just think about kind of dragging my knuckles along the ground and out, it just makes the exercise feel a lot more comfortable and actually feel my delts first. If I'm up too shrugged up like this, I do end up just using a little bit more flex. That is the dumbbell press top set done. So 52 for 7. Repeat as last week. The best I've had across the last 12 weeks was 54s, and that was for 8, I believe. So pressing has definitely been a lot harder to retain, but it hasn't dropped too much. You know, if I'm only dropping down by 2 kilo dumbbells, and I started off at the 50 kilo dumbbells, I'd call that a win, you know? So, you know, one thing I've definitely improved upon, and I can still improve better, is just control. Even though it's just a case of adding a little bit of a pause in the change of direction there, just so I can properly load my chest as it's coming out versus just shifting the weight. When it comes to these more free weight movements, that powerlifter in me just wants to get out. I just wants to fucking move the shit. Whereas I have to remember I'm trying to switch into the bodybuilding mindset of like, you know, moving with the muscle. And it's not to say that my pecs right now, they feel pumped, you know, because that set was pretty much all I had in me for that weight. The one thing you'll see is on the bench, I have this pad here, all right? So why am I using that pad? Well, essentially, my back has gotten a lot leaner. There's less cushion there, a lot less cushion than when I started off this diet process. And by actually adding a little bit of cushion to this, I feel as if I'm gaining back a little bit of that stability. I have a little bit more kind of power at the bottom position. So it feels like it's kind of offsetting some of that stability loss that I've gotten from my back just generally having less body fat in it. But another thing it's doing is it is making the bench a slight bit wider. So this means if you have wide shoulders, they're not hanging off the bench, so they're not unsupported. Because if your shoulders are unsupported and trying to push against something, you're not going to have as much power, right? So that's essentially why I'm doing it, just again to improve the overall kind of force output that I can generate during the actual movement, make the lift feel more comfortable, potentially offset some of the kind of dieting effects of just becoming jacked, you know? So gonna rest now for another 3 minutes, and then we have a set of 50s. I don't know, even though I didn't progress in that set, I feel like I could progress in the next one. So keep your eye on the prize. So we're on to the back off set now. Gonna run through some important points when you're setting up just before I start this back off set. The 50 kilos here per hand, did 8 last week. Aim is to do 8 to 12. So get the dumbbells up onto your lap. All right, so now I'm gonna get my feet underneath my knees. We're just in the position where I'm gonna keep them for the rest of the set, right? So once I have my feet set here, they're not gonna move for the rest of the set. Dumbbells on the lap. Next thing I'm gonna do is squeeze dumbbells hard. I'm gonna think about pulling my shoulder blades down in my pockets, okay? What I'm essentially doing here is I'm trying to get my lats engaged, right? So have the bench for external stability, internal stability coming from bracing other muscle groups, like the lats, right? So the lats, they're gonna be the antagonists to the pecs. So if I can get them nice and tight, nice switch on, as I'm lying back and I'm pushing against the dumbbell, I'm gonna feel a lot more stable. So you wanna ensure you have your back nice and tight, lower body nice and tight, before you get into your heavy presses. Not loosey-goosey on the fucking bench. You're in for a bad set, and you're unlikely to be able to push through those hard reps, and you're gonna be just shaking all over the place. We wanna ensure that we have as much control as possible as we're getting set up. So, a few deep breaths in. Oh, good dismount though. Really should have tested out my placement on the warm-ups. Kept hitting on my first few reps. This movement has been a lot harder to progress across the last few weeks, and it kind of makes sense, right? It is a very tough movement to progress. Any overhead pressing movement is coming down in body weight. I'm not trying to use that as an excuse, but it's just the fact of the matter. The first few weeks I definitely came in too hot, and I was getting a little bit too greedy. I was taking bigger progression jumps than I should have. I was trying to progress 5 kilo jumps here or there, and essentially adding too much load too quickly, and just ended up in me not even hitting the not even hitting the bottom end of the rep range. So I've really kind of scaled it back over across like the last like few weeks just to make it more reasonable, right? Because like if you keep adding load and you just see your reps dropping, and you're adding load, but you haven't earned the right to add load, you're not doing yourself any favors. That's the whole point of double progression. We're using a rep range. You're progressing from say 6 to 8. Once you get to 8, you have essentially earned the right to add more load. If you have that rep range, but you just keep adding load, you're gonna run into that brick wall, and you're gonna be stuck in a weight for weeks and weeks and weeks, and just get really, really frustrated and be like, oh, my program's not working. And it's not that the program is working, that you're not following your progression scheme. So I have really kind of stripped back because I made that mistake a times, and I made it mistake on this. You know, you get carried away. You see yourself doing whatever, a blue plate and a green plate here, and I'm like, I want to have 2 blues in it. I'm like, mate, you're dieting, so you know, take where you're gonna get. If I'm gonna build up rep by rep, earn my 2.5 kilo progressions, then I will eventually get there. So essentially, you just need to follow the plan. So one thing you'll notice me doing on those flies is I am starting in this position, hands a little more neutral, then I have the hand turn over as I come into the bottom position. So as I bring the arm out and I come into more internal rotation at shoulder, i.e. kind of turning that palm almost inwards, now I'm getting a bit more kind of stretch onto the chest. I'm bringing that chest into pretty much the end of its length and range, okay? As we go into horizontal abduction, in this case, horizontal abduction, bring the arm away from the body, and then internally rotating. So now it's gonna get at the end range of where that pec kind of essentially kind of owns, okay? And it's going up to this position here. You think, like, if you want to get more of a good traction in your back, you can kind of turn the hand inwards. However, because the dumbbell is going straight down through your arm and going directly through the floor, you're not really going to get any kind of added tension there. So like squeezing into contraction when you're actually not going against any load at the very top, it's probably just a waste of energy. It's the same as like squeezing your glutes at the top of the squat. So really on these, just focus on, as you're in this position here, let your arms come out inward, or let your arms come out, turn the palm over, feel that good deep stretch in the chest, and then just come up as far as you need to, right? Like once I start to feel that tension shift off my chest, which will be at the point where my hand and the elbow are just directly over my shoulder, that's the end range of the contraction, the lifting phase. And then again, back into the eccentric. Think about driving the arm across the body, or think about driving the elbows together versus driving the hands together, and you're on the money when it comes to doing pec flies. All right, had a little bit of disaster about 2 minutes ago. It had that much in it. The lid has broke off and it's spilled everywhere. At least I'm almost at the end of my session. But as somebody who's dieting right now, losing that much carbs, that hurts. Lat raise here again, another type of lateral raise exercise in the program. So first one that we did in today's workout was machine lat raise. As I mentioned to you, that one is going to primarily be really difficult through that like mid to short position, right? So through the mid range into where the delta is actually starting to contract. With this now, the way I have the cable set up, so if you look down here, look at the cable. So if I have my wrist inside this cuff here, right? The cable is pretty much at 90 degrees to my wrist, okay? What that means is at this position, it's gonna have the greatest moment arm, right? So my delta is gonna have the greatest moment arm to the line of force, okay? So if you draw a circle here through my delta, circle here through my hand, we have this cable straight line, right? Intersect at 90. Now what you see as I go through the rep is that cable starts at about 90 degrees to my wrist, okay? As I go through the movement, then the cable ultimately becomes aligned with my upper arm. So the moment arm, so the distance between the joint axis to the line of force, it's starting to drop off, okay? So as that happens, the force requirements of the delta become less. It's greatest when it's further away, but then as the line of force comes closer to the axis, it becomes less, okay? Kind of same idea when I was talking through the likes of the cam on the machine ladder raise, because the distance from the axis and the line of force or the cable remains the exact same throughout, the actual challenge is relatively the same. However, that's the resistance challenge of the machine. Now, I also mentioned in that segment that I was talking about the resistance challenge or the strength curve of the actual delta itself. One good reason why I'm kind of setting up this up the way it is, right, where it's going to be hardest here at the bottom, is it is going to match the strength curve of the delta a little bit more, okay? Generally, due to passive forces, when we're in a more stretched position, we can produce a little bit more force, right? So as the tendons are starting to lengthen and the passive tension is starting to increase, that alongside the muscle's actual strength in that position is allowing us to produce a lot of power. Think about the rebound effect at the bottom of the squat, okay? You get a lot of spring at that bottom phase, not because the muscle's stronger there, it's because there's additional passive force that we have in that position. Now through the mid-range where we're going to be a lot stronger. So in this movement here, I'm going to be having it harder at the very bottom when my muscles lengthen. I can potentially produce a bit more force. It's going to still be a little bit heavy through the mid-range, but then the resistance is going to get less as I get into the short position. So it's just allowing me to essentially kind of match the strength curve of my delt to the resistance challenge from the actual cable setup. That's one of the benefits of using cables. They're able to actually manipulate the resistance profiles just by manipulating the height and manipulating where that line of force is. Unlike gravity, it's always acting straight down, so unless you want to alter your body position, there's not a huge amount you can do there. Final movement of the day, over shoulder tricep extension. Before this block, I could not do any load in this position, right? Any tricep movement, whereas in this position, to overhead, couldn't do without pain. And this is for a few different reasons. I guess being an idiot with my powerlifting training and my tricep movements then, going too heavy when I shouldn't have, and I could probably say a whole host of other factors. But whatever the cause was, my elbows were sore and I couldn't do this motion or this motion. So I've been doing these for 15 to 20 reps for the last 12 weeks. And now in any position, right, no issue with my elbow, right? Now a lot of people are shitting on doing higher reps at the moment because they generate too much fatigue. Well, I was just training this like 5 to 8 rep range or lower, or whatever the fuck they're doing these days, or the dogma is. If I was just to stick with that dogma and try to train this position or this position, my elbow pain would still be there. I wouldn't be able to train my triceps. Training 15 to 20 reps allowed me to still progress on my triceps, progressively overload. It's definitely aided with a little bit of growth, even though I'm dieting. My triceps definitely look better. You could just say I've lost body fat, but nonetheless, my elbow pain is gone. And even at any load, I can extend my elbow a lot easier. So, a win is a win. This is where having flexibility in your training strategy is really, really important, and understanding the utility of different rep ranges versus just saying, no, this is the best for muscle growth. Well, if 5 to 8 was best for muscle growth all the time, well, then everyone would do it all the time, wouldn't they? But no, there's plenty of different reasons why people are going to pick a certain rep range over another. And quite often, what you'll see people take for like mechanistic-based studies is not necessarily what always top coaches in the game are doing. People who have actually worked with hundreds of people and helped them improve their body composition, helped them improve their strength, help them to improve their function. None of them are just using a rep range or a single set target, right? They have flexibility within their skill set, and they have a wide variety of tools to help their clients progress. The sooner you drop the dogma, the sooner you're going to progress, because you're going to be able to kind of tackle any given situation that you land yourself in when it comes to your training. So I'm going to stop yapping. I'm going to get this done. I'm going to get home. I'm going to be kind of tired. So one important thing for the coaching points here, which is see me do, is if I'm extending with this arm, this hand, push against the bicep, right? That arm wants to come across here, right? The weight wants to pull up behind me. Now by adding my hand here, it's kind of like the pad on a preacher curl. So I'm restricting my arm from moving across, so I can just really focus on the elbow extension without letting now the shoulder rotate across. The rear delts now also kind of trying to contribute towards keeping this position or trying to like pull it back, or even just to reduce any kind of demands on the rear delt itself to try to maintain this position, right? Give it a bit of love to the bicep. Use the hand there to stabilize it. And then all to focus on is extending the elbow.
All right, so that wraps up today's training video. As you'll see, I did a round of posing there after my training. AJ's just asked me to get post-workout shots in. So last week I did one after my pull day. This week I'm doing one after my push day. And he just wants to see what type of training session or pump work makes me look my best. Now, realistically, at my kind of level of body fat right now, the difference between pre-workout to post-workout in terms of physique and condition is going to be not as much as somebody who is, you know, going to be actually getting on the bodybuilding stage, who is like, you know, 5% body fat. There's going to be less with me, but definitely my push session is the one where I found the least amount of like residual pump, like, you know, like half an hour after my training session, I'm still feeling like, you know, fucking jacked up my delts, my pecs. And you know, even within the session, like even despite today taking a lot longer because I'm talking to a camera, today's session did, it definitely was not necessarily dragging ass more, but when I'm setting up the camera everywhere, I'm talking to the camera, I definitely do lose my bit of focus, and as well the cadence of my workout, because I generally just go from one exercise to the next one. There's no like, you know, massive gaps in between the exercises, so I'm able to achieve a somewhat decent pump. But today you just like, you know, just didn't really get much there, so I'm not too happy with how the physique is looking in that video, to be honest. But it is what it is. Like, you know, that's just physique development for you. Some days you're gonna have fucking phenomenal looking check-in pictures, some days you're gonna have phenomenal looking videos, whatever like that, but some days it's just not gonna be the one. Like, it is 6:30 in the evening time, so like, you know, the physique is gonna lose a little bit of like leanness as you get later in the day, right? Especially if your body fat is a little bit higher. So yeah, look, is what it is. Send it over to coach, let him do what he does on that coaching side. That's why I pay coaches, just to take the pictures, follow the plan, and he tells me what to do, right? That's the benefit of having a coach. It's just, it takes the decision making, takes the emotion out of it for you, because having looked at those pictures, I'm like, I don't know, do I need a refeed? Do I need to go a little bit lower my calories? Because the last few days my weight has been a little bit, it's been holding, right? I dipped into the low 89s last week, and this whole week has been, you know, in the 90s. And I definitely do feel like I'm holding a little bit of water. It could be a whoosh on the way, right? Could have a big body weight drop coming up. So, you know, we'll just hold the fort and just keep following the plan. But anyway, that's pretty much that for this video. I hope you did enjoy it. If you did, make sure to leave me a comment if you have any questions. Give it a like. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe already. And yeah, we'll catch you in the next one.